Thank you very much. Gosh, it's actually quite an honour. I always have to start off with what feels really true for me in a talk. And I think it's a real honour to give a talk about a figure as rich and energetic and wise as Padmasambhava. So I'm just a small vehicle trying to communicate a vast vision. Whether I can do that effectively, you'll find out. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to do that. So when I was thinking about the talk, a few memories came to mind. A few memories of my early associations with Padmasambhava, but something more significant actually came to mind, which was something that happened just a couple of years ago, since I've been living here. And it was around the time that Sangharachita, our founder, died. And during that time, I walked into the atrium, into the library atrium there, and I walked in, and on a big stand was an almost life-size rupa of Padmasambhava. And I was so shocked. I didn't know that this rupa was arriving. I was so shocked, I just wanted to prostrate to this figure. And it just felt so real for me that this life-size figure of Padmasambhava had arisen here at this particular time. And it might become clearer why I'm saying that a little bit later on. But I thought, I want to start with this because it sort of, it really brings out for me something that Padmasambhava has already given me. So what I want to do in the talk is talk. I want to talk a little bit about the symbolism of Padmasambhava. We've got this beautiful image on the shrine, which I hope you can all see. So I want to talk about some of the symbolism, and I want to talk a little bit about symbols themselves, but I then want to talk a bit about my relationship to that, so that it's not, so that hopefully it becomes a bit real for you all. So let's have a little look. This image, I don't know, I came in here thinking, do I really need to give a talk? Look, if you look at that image, it says everything. So really have a look at it. Just sit and take it in for a minute or two. There's colour, there's energy, there's implements. And there's the whole face, the whole figure. And he's communicating something to us. So Padmasambhava is a figure that is both a historical figure. He was around in the 8th century, and he's the figure who is responsible for taking Buddhism to Tibet. But he's also a mythical figure, so associated with Padmasambhava, he becomes this sort of matrix of history and myth. And in many ways, for most of us, they're deeply embedded, and that we can't actually separate out the two. So we're sort of talking of a figure who's magical, mysterious, and ungraspable. So this figure is a figure that we can take into our hearts and who will transform us if we really let him in. But what will he transform? So let me talk a little bit about some of the symbols, and then we can talk a little bit about the transformation that can cause in our lives. So first of all, where should we start? Let's start with his clothes. So Padmasambhava is very, very associated with the colour red. So the colour of passion, the colour of energy, the colour of heart, the colour of love. So his outer coat is red. And that outer coat reflects Padmasambhava's altruistic dimension. It reflects his willingness and his desire to engage with the world, to really go out to the world and alleviate suffering. That's the heart of Padmasambhava. That's what he's really trying to communicate to us, and he's trying to reach into the world to touch us with that. Then there's the inner robe, the robe, actually a middle robe, which is the yellow robe, which is a symbol of Padmasambhava's ethical purity. So it's a symbol of his practice, which has led him really into the heart of Buddhism. So he never leaves that behind. He never leaves behind that sort of ethical dimension. He never leaves behind, if you want to say, the sort of the truth, the basics of Buddhism. They're always with him, but they've been transformed into something richer and deeper. So his clothes reveal his ability to keep going more and more deeply into what life really is about, and not staying on the surface. And then he's got an inner robe, a blue robe, which is the sort of robe that reflects something mysterious and magical and secret. It's a sort of the thing that's closest to us, that can seem hidden, but actually is manifest in all that we do. So it shows itself in ways that might not be obvious, but it's a richness and a, how could you put it? It's really trying to look reality in the face. I think that's what I would say. That robe reflects Padmasambhava's ability to look reality in the face and not turn away, and to take it in, and to be changed by it. So his clothes straight away tell us something about him. They tell us that he is a master. I am going to use a word that might not be quite right, but anyway, he's a master of transformation. So he's been through what might be considered all the schools of Buddhism, mastered them all, and is a magician in using the skills that he's acquired through that mastery. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah. So that's one thing, his robes. But there's so much more to him than that. So you can see in his hand, you can see there, he's holding a skull. He's holding a skull cup. So what do you think that's saying to us? What do you think that skull cup is saying? He's saying that he's not afraid. He can hold and not only hold it, but actually what I see there is he's holding it close to his heart. And what that's saying is that he's holding close to his heart the ability to see beyond self. He can see beyond the sort of the me here and you out there. He's broken through that which separates us all, and he can hold to his heart the truth that we're not separate. That sort of it symbolises that ability to be completely free. Actually, it's the freedom of the lack of self, making ourselves the centre of the universe, and being able to flow just with life, to flow with the energy of life. So it's a very important symbol. And the skull cap is filled with the nectar of bliss. So that's sort of saying quite clearly to us that if we really can let go of this sense of me here, you out there, I've got to protect myself, you've got to protect yourself, if we let go of all that, what happens? We experience bliss, we experience freedom. So it's a very beautiful symbol. And out of that symbol comes the ability to, what shall I say? No, I think I've said enough about that actually. Let me just move on a bit. Yeah, I would just say one thing. Out of that symbol, we just have the ability to stay open to anything that arises. We can meet whatever is happening in our world, whatever is happening around us. We can just meet that with an openness, without pushing it away, without grasping it towards us. We can just be free. So really this symbol, just thinking of it, holding that close to our heart, the truth of that close to our heart is the key to freedom. The other adornment, so he's full of these sort of tantric objects, these sort of implements, and well, somebody described it. He's got a lot of tantric gear. So there is another little bit of tantric gear that I'd like to talk about, and that is in his hook of his arm here. I don't know if you can see it here. He's got what's called a Vanga. And the thing I really wanted to point out about the Vanga is that it's got 3 heads, severed heads. The bottom one is a freshly severed head. The middle one is a decomposing head. And the top one is a skull. This is the bit I really wanted to pull out here. And I wanted to pull it out because I think it's such an important symbol of his spiritual strength. This is what this speaks to me of. Holding the Vanga and showing those heads, he's saying something. They symbolise greed, hatred and delusion. Those heads are a symbol of greed, hatred and delusion. And what he's saying, by holding it there, is this is what's possible when we cut through our ignorance. It's possible to cut through greed, hatred and delusion and be free from that. So you're free then to enter into the enlightened state. And he's saying, we can do this. I've done it, you can do it. And that is what's possible. So those heads are really important. And they're important because I stand here doing this, and when I'm doing it, I'm thinking, that's Padmasambhava saying, the spiritual life is worth it. The spiritual life makes a difference. And to engage with the spiritual life will free you from all that bound you to suffering and negative mental states. And here it is. This is a symbol of it. So that really speaks to me, that whole sort of image of the Vanga. There's a lot more I could say about that, but actually I want to move on a little bit more. Because the other really significant thing about Padmasambhava is his face. So there are a couple of things I really want to bring out about the features. So, first of all, you might notice that he is smiling. But you might also notice that he's frowning. And I don't know if you just try it. It's really hard to do, both a smile and a frown at the same time. It's not easy. I was trying it this afternoon, and it was difficult. But what this fierce smile is saying, it's showing you absolute kindness. There's nothing but kindness in this figure. There's nothing but kindness in this smile. And the frown is saying, get on with it. You know, you have to make the effort to move forward in your spiritual life if you want to be free. And he is fierce about this, so that the frown is this sort of fierceness. He wants us to be free. He wants us to be practicing. He wants us to move forward. And the frown is saying, you know that life isn't always what it seems. You know that that really what we're... Well, how do I say this? Yeah, he's really saying, you know that the way we're living our life doesn't really work, actually. And that deep down we know it doesn't work. And it doesn't need him to tell us that. It doesn't need me to tell you that. We know it. But we're always turning away from it. You know, the minute that we're caught up with something not working, we sort of want to look the other way and go off and get distracted by something, or we want to go off and find some pleasure or something like that. We keep slipping off it. But he's saying, don't do that. Stay with the reality of what's happening and see it for what it is. That's really the look that he's giving us. So I love this phrase. I was listening to somebody talking the other day, and they said, you could say that Padmasambhava is the no-nonsense guru. And I thought, yes, that's what he is. He's a no-nonsense guru. He wants you to see the truth. He wants us to see the truth. The other thing about his face is, as you can see there, he's got wide eyes, sort of protruding somewhat. And his eyes want to look directly at you. They want, you know, I was thinking about the communication exercises this morning. I thought, goodness, what would it have been like to have done that with Padmasambhava? He would have been looking directly at you and seeing really into you, and that would be an awesome experience. So they're both gentle and loving and fierce. So Padmasambhava won't let us off the hook, basically. He's going to keep giving us the stare. He'll be reminding us with his implements that we need to practice. So I did want to say a little bit more personally something about Padmasambhava and something about my own experience, because he sort of opened a door for me that I didn't know I needed to have opened, and there were several doors actually, but one of the key things for me is actually what I've been talking about. He opened the door for me to sort of begin to imagine that life could be very rich. And he opened the door that said, life can be so much more than you think it is. And it was through, actually, the symbolism that happened. And what I mean by that is, I realise now, I didn't realise then, but I realised that I had a very materialistic view of the world. And what I mean by that is, I really believe that there was no hidden depths to things, that things were what they were. You know, what was in front of you was what it was. It didn't mean anything more than the... In fact, what I'm describing is probably a very nihilistic approach to life. I think that's really what I'm describing, that things had no more meaning than just what was happening, and that symbols and all of that, I didn't really think of that as even having it. I just thought that was all made up, if you like. And what I realised, I got to this point where in my life there was absolutely no colour. You know, it was just grey in some respects. You know, it was sort of, you get up in the morning, you go to work, you do your job, you go home, and all of that might be very pleasant, it all might be very comfortable, but it was grey. And I think I was in my very early 30s, and I was walking home from work one day, and I thought, goodness me, I've got a really good job that I loved, I've got a really nice house, I've got a very nice partner, we've got a lovely dog, we go on holidays, I've got pretty nice clothes. But if that's all there is, if that's the end of it, if I've now reached the pinnacle of life's experience, and I'm just in my 30s and I've just got to keep doing it now, on and on and on, I thought, I just think I might as well end it all now. And it's not because it was bad. It's not because there was anything wrong. It was just that it was just dull. And even with the best job in the world, which I loved, it was still dull. There was something clearly missing. And it was... So out of all that missing and not being quite thinking that life had to be more than this, we sold the house, went off travelling for a year, and that's when I came across the Dharma. So I was in Nepal at the time, and in fact I was in Nepal, in Kathmandu, saw my very, very first image of Padmasambhava in a big temple, and it was huge, but I had no idea what I was looking at. I just knew that it had a lot of energy and I should be scared. So I intuited that quite quickly. But really that sort of emptiness, that sense of emptiness, I was trying to fulfill by going off travelling. I wasn't trying to fulfill it by thinking I needed a spiritual life. In fact, I arrogantly thought that that would be the last thing in the world that I would ever be interested in. I was quite a confirmed atheist, well, not atheist, quite a confirmed religion is the opiate of the masses sort of person, and I didn't want anything to do with that. So I wasn't looking for anything. And it was when I came across the Dharma in Kathmandu, it was completely by accident actually. I'd been travelling for about 9 months, and I happened to see a notice that said meditation meditation course. I thought, oh, meditation. God, that could mean I could just stop travelling and sit down for a few days. Maybe I'll do that course. So I did the course, and it happened to be run by 2 order members from this community. And this was back in 1990. And did the meditation course, actually quite took to meditation like a duck to water, much to my amazement. And then they offered this lovely 1-week retreat. So I went on this retreat, and the very first teaching that I heard on Buddhism, I thought, oh my God, I'm a Buddhist. I thought, I'm a Buddhist, and I think I always have been. And the very first teaching that I heard was the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, which some of you will be familiar with. But the first noble truth being that suffering exists, there is suffering. And I felt like I'd heard sort of magic words. There is suffering. Nobody had ever told me that. Everybody told me that you shouldn't suffer, and if I was suffering, I must be doing something wrong, and that maybe I should buy something new to alleviate my suffering. Maybe that would be the way out. And so hearing that there actually is this thing called suffering, and there was a cause of it, and there was a way out from it, transformed my life. And those simple statements sort of open the door to the ability to... well, what do they open the door to? To see that life had more meaning than I could ever imagine. That's really what it opened the door to. And that's where the whole sort of relationship with symbols came in, because I sort of began to see that you could look at life more and more deeply. It wasn't just the superficial experience that I'd been having, and doesn't mean I didn't have deep conversations. Doesn't mean that, but it just meant that there was only a certain level that I could go to, because I thought nothing else existed beyond that. And Padmasambhava opened the door to a deeper significance in all that we do. So I pointed out the symbolism of his symbolism, but around us all the time there are symbols that are pointing us in the direction of the truth. And that's what we need to keep our eyes open for, and keeping them open on this retreat. So just going back to this whole... should I just check? Have I got a bit more time or not? Yeah. So just going back to the sort of truths that sort of woke me up to something deeper and more meaningful. You probably know the word for the sort of unsatisfactoriness of life, the Buddhist term being dukkha. And we're always, what I could see, even just in this short retreat, was that I was always trying to get away from this unsatisfactory feeling. I was always sort of, when anything felt like it didn't quite fit, I'd be reaching out for something. And I was always looking for it out there in something or somebody else. And what traditionally that's called in Buddhist sort of language is that I was looking for a refuge. I was looking for a place of safety, a place where I could feel secure and loved and all of those things. I was looking for that outside of myself. And this dukkha permeates all of us and all of our lives. And it's this we have to really engage with and get to know. And there are sort of several levels of dukkha. There's sort of actual dukkha, the pain, the dukkha of having, the dukkha of not getting what we want and getting what we don't want. Has anybody had that experience? Is that recognisable? And then there's the physical pain we get, actual dukkha, genuine, real suffering. There's loss, there's grief, there's separation, all of those things. And then there's a sort of, what I think you could call it a sort of psychological dukkha. The dukkha where in our heart of hearts we know that things are impermanent. We know that things will end, and we know that things can't last. So in our heart of hearts we can have this feeling of insecurity. And again, when we have this feeling, what we generally do is turn to something outside of ourselves, something to sort of allay the feeling, to smooth it over, to make it all feel okay. And then there's this sort of third level, which we will have all experienced, I believe, and it's sort of existential dukkha. It's when we realise, a bit like I was telling you about my life, my job and all of that, when we realise that it's okay as far as it goes, but it doesn't go far enough. When we realise that we've sort of crammed our being into a bit of a cage, actually, and we're a bit caged in, and we know we're sort of bigger than that. At some level, we know we're more than that. But we sort of we're all cramped and caged. Subhuti, one of our teachers, says that we're lions in cages. We're great big creatures with loads of energy and power. We've got beautiful silky coats, we've got rippling muscles, but we're trapped in a cage. So, yes. Let me just think about where I want to go with that. Yeah. So what what we're trying to do, what we try to do is stay in the cage and be safe. But that is never, ever going to touch us. That will never make us deeply happy and truly free. So what is it we need to do instead? Well, we need to look at Padmasambhava. We need to look towards an enlightened being. And we need to think, what is it that they have that we want to move towards? And what Padmasambhava has is unlimited depths. So when I was describing the mastery that he had over all of the schools of Buddhism, he has unlimited depth, he's got unlimited breadth. He can hold all the conflicting things that arise and all the contradictory things that arise in life. He can hold all of that. And he's limitlessly beautiful. So he's... no, I won't say the last thing. No, I think that's enough. You can talk to me later about it. The thing that I didn't say. And so what this beauty is trying to do is he's trying to entice us in. He's trying to say, come, come. You too can be... You too can move away from that which keeps you caged. All of us can, as long as we practice. I think that's all I've got to say. Sorry.